Well, hello, everyone. I am blessed to bring to you this conversation. My friend and colleague Mukti is here with us, and she is the co-founder of Open Gate Sangha with her husband and partner, Ajishanti. And before we started the recording, I asked her how long the Sangha has been open. 27 years it has been in form. That is just incredible, Mukti. What a
Yeah,
journey that has probably been in and of itself.
you bet.
And you're stepping in as of now to the position of being the leader and the facilitator and the container holder for Open Gate Sangha. Is that right?
Yeah, you could put it in those words. Yes, yes, I'm gonna be the head teacher and head administrator.
Okay, great. Well, I celebrate you. Thank you for giving that
Actually, as of
yes.
today, I am the head teacher.
That
Yes,
is so
head
awesome.
administrator because I did retired yesterday. Yeah.
That is really, really awesome. But I want to celebrate you, woman to woman, friend to friend, spiritual adventure to spiritual adventure.
Okay, thanks much.
So, our topic for this summit is discovering self. And I'm curious in our friendship, because we've never talked on this level, what's the impetus for you for even entertaining the desire and the focus to discover yourself? What's there in that?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. There's a whole history there, and yet it always comes back to the present moment, there's a interest in really seeing things as they are. And I've seen over life that there's so many ideas that I've had about myself and a kind of working narrative that I've carried forward historically about who I think I am or who others think I am. And I think that when I hear the word discovery of self, I really think of a deep sense of self that's kind of under all the narrative and even actually under the whole bank of experiences that I've had. There's been something about me that's been present throughout all of the comings and goings and high experiences and low experiences. And so in my own orientation, there's this interest in really deeply knowing a sense of self that's not defined by all of those comings and goings, or even defined by the experiences I've had, or the ideas of myself, or the ideas that others have of me. And so a real deep discovery of self to me is connecting in the deep waters of being that are underneath all of those comings and goings on the surface, and just that surface view of things. And so it's really connecting with a deep well of essential self and that essence. What I found so far is that it really is expressive of one's nature as spirit. And in the very depths of that is this sense of essence that is universal, that is the very essence that appears as the spirit peering through your eyes or another person's eyes, or that is manifesting as all of the myriad of displays of creatures and beings and appearances of life in the big play around us.
I love that. I love the way that you're able to talk about the individual and the collective all at the same time. And sometimes it comes up, the deeper question when opening to the discovery of self, of why it even matters. You know,
Mm.
and even today, as I know in my environment, there are so many that are returning once again to the instability of the world,
Oh yeah.
to the uncertainty of why we're even here. And it always brings that question up, I think, for all human beings. I mean, the earliest texts we come across show us that human beings, when they were self reflecting, were asking the why questions. For
Mhm.
you personally, why has it mattered? Why has it mattered to care about coming into the present moment, about experiencing the essential self?
Yeah, I think for myself, there's two ways I hear this question. Um, and I'll tell you the first way, which is perhaps may sound like I'm not answering the question, but if you listen closely, I hope I will be. I think for me, I think there's a more important question than why does something matter? First of all, I ask myself, does it matter? And sometimes there's just things that matter to us. We just have a certain nature. We come in with a certain nature and we're drawn to certain things and we care about certain things and we don't care about other things. And each person's unique. And it just so happens that it's just really mattered to me to really discover what's at the essence of things. And
Mm.
so it's just kind of how I came in, when I very, not that I had it from my earliest memories, but as soon as I started hearing words like God or union or truth or just, contemplation or meditation, I just found that they matter to me. So I don't know that I had to answer to my mind to that, like justify that. It just simply was so in my case. And I find that's true for a lot of people. And so um, if it matters, it matters. And you just feel that sense of something mattering because it lands like in your core, or it reverberates in your core. You find yourself leaning in with certain topics or lighting up or, saying, that sounds good, or that has a ring of truth, or I'm called to that, so there's just those ways that we're hooked up. But I believe what you might be getting at is when there is a deep connection with that sense of self that we can feel really intimate with in the depths of our being or in relationship with others and our relationship with life, it translates into a certain kind of consciousness. It shapes. It can shape our sense of um, our just being, our sense of being, and our sense of feeling at home in ourselves, or a kind of connection with that, a kind of ground of being or an essence that is all pervading, that just so happens, according to most people that bump into it, it is very expressive of a kind of peace and allowance and uh, equanimity or joy or brightness that we can nourish in, and when we dip into that and we can fill up with, and that can permeate our sense of our own presence or our own consciousness, our own appetites, and it carries over into what we bring to whatever we do in the world, and people pick up on it. They pick up on brightness or peacefulness or calmness or clarity or uniqueness, authenticity, and people are drawn to that, and it's very healing for people to be in the midst of uh, a calming presence or a listening presence, or allow us almost like a field of allowing unconditional love, as best we can express that uh, through that perfume of depth that can we can fill up in, and then that overflows into our activities.
I
So
love.
that makes a difference. People feel it, they pick up on it.
Yes, agreed. And I like your twofold answer. And generally, when I have a question that comes forward, I really don't have an objective. I'm a big open to all possibility. And a word itself can be a springboard towards some real fun exploration of something. And I
Mhm.
like the way in your first answer, what was arising for me was the phrase of a sacred curiosity, that there's something in our essential nature that has a natural propensity in directions. And just being in that alone has its own sets of inquiry to it.
Right.
And there's an innocence there. I mean, children have this innocence that gets them curious about things without it having to be this hard line of what does it mean, where are we going, and without almost a grasping of
Yeah.
needing to hold on to something for the sake of. There's a bit more of a softness of opening into the essential nature that has that innocence and curiosity. And I love the way you point to that.
Yeah.
Uh,
And it's alive, right? It's it's more of exploration that's engaging, simply because I think the children are often more connected with a sense of, what lights them up.
right.
And
Very
uh,
simply.
those those are laid with, all of the, adult concerns or burdens of thought, to-do lists and judgments that, adults have been
Conditioned.
kind of conditioned into, yeah, or
Yes.
taken on.
And when I think of your second statement, it provides a bridge that I think could be really helpful to all of our listeners. Because what I hear, and against me overlaying my, is that as individuals, we are this individuation of consciousness. Therefore, these natural impulses within us are the unique expression of consciousness. And where we're led in the inquiry that builds hopefully upon the innocence and curiosity, or comes back to it, right? Comes back to it and becomes free again, is that it does lead us into a particular and a specific path of individuation. Like when my some of my early childhood experiences happen, they are still my worldview. They're still specific to me. They don't need to be another person's path, but my own orientation about my greatest happiness being about being and becoming in God,
Mhm.
and what that is, what it isn't, getting broken down, rebuilding, rebirth, deepening, that remains specific to me. And what I hear in your second statement is that we can come from this place of tapping into our essential nature and have specific questions that are the ways that we're led to learn how to express and discover who we are.
Yes, yes.
Can you relate to that a
Oh,
little
for sure. Yeah.
bit?
For some reason, it reminds me of a lemon tree we have, where it's it's trying to find its way into the light, and it goes where it's drawn, and it's has a very quirky set of branchings that you wouldn't normally see, but it's just very unique. It's responding to where where it's drawn, and it goes into all these different life path expressions, just like we all do. And we end up, having this very unique um, vessel for consciousness, or vehicle instrument for consciousness to, move forward through us, for example, as presence and, yeah, personality and the whole thing.
Right. Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's so gracious. And for me, when I reflect upon you, the bit that I know you, an important part of that path has been Sangha. And
Oh, yeah.
especially with
Yeah.
being part of Open Gate Sangha in particular,
Mhm.
why? What was moving in you that drew you into Sangha as part of that process? And how have you found it really anything from valuable to important?
Well, it reminds me a bit of the first question, in the sense that I came in being very kind of tribe oriented, if you want to call it that. I didn't even know those words when I was young, but yeah, I mean, I think some people are lead a more solitary life, and I can do that as well to a certain extent. But I really come alive in relationship, and really enjoy people. And I get motivated and more passionate about things when I believe they benefit others. Um, it's kind of my hookup. And so, I love being of service. I love being involved. I love um, watching other people reach their, you know, depths and heights. And um, I wish the highest for them. And that really brings me a lot of happiness. So I've always been really sort of clan, tribe, community oriented person. And it's also sort of true of most of my family that I was born into. So I think that, again, it's partly my nature to be drawn to Sangha. Um, I like it in balance. I like to dip in, and then I like to also step out and have quiet time on my own because I'm a bit of a introvert extrovert combo. Um, but I think that for me, it's been important. Song has been so important because I'm hooked up that way. It provides a certain um, nourishment and meaning and purpose and arena to not only enjoy that sense of support and togetherness and connection, but also to be able to see more clearly through others, how I'm relating in the world and, just learning from relationship and the challenges. And I'm interested in more and more refined expression of being. And so I feel like I learn how to navigate more skillfully through trying things out and being in relationship and seeing what lands and what resonates for people and what doesn't. And so those are some ways it's been important for me personally. I i think that sometimes I've heard analogies for Sangha like, oh, we're like a pot of potatoes, that each person's a potato in the big pot and it's getting stirred and all the little nubs on the potatoes are getting knocked off, as we bump up against each other and, are in relationships. So there's a real value in learning how to become more refined and learning how to reach deeper in ourselves and bring that to relating and to be able to um, be available to each other with a greater sense of presence and listening and connecting in a way that's very intimate.
I especially in these really vulnerable parts of ourselves. I found being an itinerant minister and somebody that I love humanity. I feel a belonging, like humanity's my sangha, like
Mhm.
humanity generally.
Yeah.
I like it in particular groups, but I found that some of my own service has been to those who have longed for community and not found a community that allows them enough freedom to continue their discovery process. Like
Oh.
there's the aspirations are there, right? There's the spirit is nourished by community, and especially in communities that have a certain container that has a degree of structure or ritual or something that's offered that offers a containment, a place to land,
Mhm.
a
Yeah,
place to
or like
conceive.
spoken or unspoken agreement of
Correct, right?
what we all value.
Yes. And many saying no to community or communities because they found that it's meeting that deep desire, the holy desire of the self, only to a certain degree. And then it asks them to give up parts of their inquiry. It
Mhm.
asks too
Yeah.
much. For
Yes.
instance, some that have left, I used to be Catholic,
Mhm.
and many I've served that have been part of various communities that I'm aware of. have needed to say no in order to say yes to themselves.
Yes. Yeah. That's
And
important.
yet, right? And yet there's something still so powerful about having community, having for all the reasons you mentioned and even more, and how much we long for a sense of belonging somewhere,
Yeah. Yeah.
going somewhere where somebody knows our name. There's a song, right? There's going
Yeah.
where somebody knows my name.
That's the Cheers
Oh, that's what it
TV program. Yeah.
is. That's right.
Everybody knows your name.
That's right. what what has been maybe one example of being part of Open Gate Sangha that has let you come to a new part of yourself, whether it was through a certain healing of a belief, a certain letting go, a certain stepping into the beauty of what you are? What's one example of something juicy that's happened?
Wow, that's a fantastic question. Let me just take a second.
Sure.
Well, I don't know if this would fit your definition of juicy, but I'm going to share something that's been incredibly valuable to me. Um, when I'm with people in the Open Gate Sangha community that Adi and I founded, and really in most relating with people, but especially in that community, I hold a certain role of leadership, and so when people are talking to me, I really feel like it's their time. It's unless they're asking me about myself, which happens. I'm mostly really wanting to show up for them in whatever however they want to come forward. If they want to share something that's, really positive, or they want to share a question or a concern, I've really learned to, and I maybe don't always succeed at this, but I really feel I've greatly come to love showing up in a way in front of them where I'm really just letting the moment unfold, and I'm listening to them in a way where instead of trying to lead the conversation in certain directions, I just sort of let these impressions like waft into me, and I just let things register, these imprints of what the person's speaking about, of who they are as a person, like their essence. I'll feel that register in me. Uh, and so I'm really trying to, it's not that I think about this a lot. I've just sort of come to this way of being where I'm registering these encounters on many levels. I'm listening to their words and the course of the conversation, but I'm also experiencing their being. And so I'm in conversation with their essence in a sense by bearing witness to that as I'm in conversation with them about whatever we're talking about.
Mm.
And that's been a really powerful thing. And what I notice is things will just come in that space of connection that just reveal, like, oh, this feels significant, or this kind of pops forward in the conversation, and it draws attention. And I've just sort of learned to not be so forward in the conversation, just sort of be more spacious and receptive, and just notice what is lighting up or has a ring of importance in a conversation. And I'll just let those impressions guide me in how I further the conversation and the dialogue that's back and forth. Like, I don't want to miss those important pieces. And I don't know if I'm making great sense without an example, but a person could be telling me like a whole bunch of concerns, but they happen to mention this thing that they knew was off in the situation. And I'll just come back to that, and I might say, "Tell me about that piece." And how did you know that that was off? And where did that register and in your body or in your in in your sense of self? Like, did it feel off energetically? Did it feel off morally? Or I don't know that I would say all those things, but I'm mostly just asking questions and just getting them to be more conscious of what's actually happening and be more conscious of what they do know already before they ask me what I know, and I'm putting them in touch with their own wisdom. And that's what's interesting to me is then like helping them stand in their own authority. And I think that's back to your other conversation about being in certain communities where you may feel limits on what you can question or what you can explore. And I like taking those limits off and then also putting that authority back on the individual person who I'm interacting with. And I found that creating space for the conversations to just reveal themselves is probably the most powerful thing that I've learned about being in Sangha.
That word space was coming up so strong as you were sharing. And uh, the power of spaciousness.
Yeah.
It allows so much. It allows so much movement without judgment, without constraint. It allows everything to be and exist. And then what's truly stirring of spirit can come forward. The role of spaciousness in discovering the self. How might you, and I know our time is coming to an end, we're conditioned as human beings in our ideas of what it means to be responsible for our process, to be on it. No,
Mhm.
I mean, I can't tell you how many people, because I'm in a similar service, are with so much integrity and devotion on their process
Mhm.
and pull themselves towards uh, constraining presence and questions a lot,
Mhm. Mhm.
and find it sometimes to be challenging to allow the spaciousness
Yeah.
come forward, what's going to come forward, because of the amount of trust it takes.
Mhm.
You're stepping into the unknown again and again, and you're stepping away from the conditioning of what we've even been told is responsible. There's a lot of misconceptions about allowing around the being quality of our personal development. And yet, I too, like you, have found that that's where most of the real transformative shifting happens, is in that. As we kind of bring this to a close, how might you speak of your own understanding of the spaciousness, and in relation to it, repatterning our ideas of what it means to be responsible to our self awakening process?
Mhm.
It's a big question, isn't it?
Yes, it's a great question. I think there's sometimes a little tug of war in people. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but that sense of like, oh, should I allow and just sort of let it all unfold, or should I be proactive? Should I engage? Should I, and so there's a balance. And I think that there's this quality of space to me that's really fascinating, which is there can be this sense of attunement to spaciousness, and we can almost feel it in the atmosphere of our kind of portable presence as we walk into this situation or that. We're bringing an atmosphere of, like you said, allowance or listening, or there's just that way that can kind of radiate or be a scent of the perfume of our particular presence, if we of what we bring into a situation. Or we can be really caught up and tight, and that kind of comes into the dynamics when we kind of poured our presence over into this conversation. So so this kind of atmosphere of spaciousness. But what I think is really interesting is we can also kind of gather that that sense of energetic, like, aliveness. We can also kind of hold it in internally, physically. I have a lot of teachings about the body too, and there could be that sense of like like standing in our shoes or taking our seat or being, showing up or being present. But there's that sense of sort of being engaged. And so there is that ability to respond because we're engaged and we're connected with the moment. And so there's, I think, that balance of being allowing that's very open and soft, but also very engaged. You know, it's much more dynamic. It's much more yang in the yin yang principle, right? And so there's that sense, or you could say it's yin because it's very solid. You know, there's that sense of I'm here, I'm with you. You know, we're in this. And so when we're really engaged and involved, I think that we are able to respond and not just sort of drifty and too amorphous. And I think we do, you know, the world needs engaged people. And I think that the question becomes like, where are we, what are we engaged with? You know, what are we, um, who are we, and what is our sense of self that we bring to what we do when we're responding? And, you know, where is our consciousness residing? Um, what is it conveying when we respond? And I think that those are really important questions because sometimes there's so much attention on, you know, how to respond, and I'm supposed to respond this way, or I've heard this is how I'm supposed to respond, or I have to choose how I'm supposed to respond, that there's not always a stepping back and saying, before I even get too involved in what I'm supposed to do, who is it that I am that's showing up for this? You know, what am I essentially? And what is it that I want to bring to whatever it is I decide? You know, whatever it is that I engage in or participate in. And I think that makes all the difference in the world. And I think it actually may possibly even matter more than what we do is what we bring to what we do.
Thank you for that. Thank you
Yeah.
for that. Well, I tell you, every time we do an exchange, I want to keep taking it further, but we're coming to the end of our time so quickly. And so, bringing this conversation to a close, is there some nuance or some little angle or something that you would like to end our conversation with? I think it's very rich, and I know I'm going to re-listen to it because I love that all that you've shared has great insight.
Yes. Well, you know, I may speak more to this, you know, with what I offer toward the summit, you know, with the recordings I make. Um, but I do think that there's this term called self. You know, this whole summit or webinar is about discovering self. And I think often people will first relate to what it is to discover their sense of personhood, you know, in a deep way. And but as we started our conversation at the beginning, what many have found throughout the ages, many have found, is that when you go deeper into sense of your individual self, you come upon an essence of being or an essence of life that is all pervading, and it reveals as what we might think of as self with a capital S. That's how they use it in India, like this sense of the whole expression of life, this whole display and play of the big body, I call it sometimes. And so I think that what's important maybe to me to leave people with is sometimes it's necessary to set aside all of our ideas of ourself, our own ideas, other ideas, and really go into a place of being willing not to have that in our known experience, and to really enter into a sense of mystery. That sense of leaving oneself, all ideas of oneself, to really enter into the depth of mystery at the core of who and what we are, in order for our consciousness to be really offered into that, um, you could call it holy ground or quiet unknown, and to go into that quiet space in order to know, to gain truly new knowledge and a new sense of being. um, So that there's a phrase I think many people use. I'm not sure all the people who've become famous for it, but sometimes you have to leave yourself in order to find yourself, or to find uh, altogether different sense of the very essence of self and life. And so I just wish everybody blessed luck with that, and great support through all the practices of really subtracting out that sense of separateness, or the drive one in the driver's seat, to really just let that release into the moment.
Thank you. What a great way to end our conversation.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for your time.
you're
Thank you.
welcome. Oh, thank you also for inviting me and to engage in this way. And um, all the best to everyone who's here with us.